Hi, welcome to this video on the channel. If you're just joining us, welcome. If you're already a subscriber, thank you for subscribing. If you get some value out of this video, please like the video, share it, and subscribe to the channel. In this video today, I'm going to talk about how to pace a 5K row, give you some thoughts about kind of how to get your mind around how to row this kind of a piece. I've already done a 2K row one on my channel, so I hope this one will complement it. I've had a few inquiries from people I work with, clients about this, so this is why I'm putting this out. The 5K row is interesting. It's typically, a 20-minute plus or minus effort, depending on, where you're at. With different things. So maybe it's 25 for you, maybe it's an 18-minute. It just depends where you are. And my goal in this video is to just talk you through like how I think about coaching a 5K row. So the first thing that I would say that is important is, first of all, there's kind of a learning curve, right? You're gonna learn how to row this piece, okay? And I think initially you're going to start perhaps a little bit conservatively while you're trying to figure out, what your target pace is for a particular piece. So, with that said, I think there's a few things to think about in terms of, well, what should your 5K pace be ideally? So when you're thinking about your 5K pace, typically it's just going to depend like how quick your 2K is, right? So for example, if your 2K split is a 2-minute split, which would equate to an 8-minute 2K, then typically, your 5K split is going to be somewhere between plus 6 to 8 seconds per split slower. So it might be reasonable to say that, if you're rowing a 2-minute split, then your 5K pace ideally might be a 2:08 for, that particular distance. Okay, this is just a rough rule of thumb for this. But when I was in college, what I found was that my 2K split, when I was going the fastest that I could, was, like something like a 1:33. So my 5K split would have been like a 1:38, 1:39, like plus 5 to 6 seconds of that 2K. So just to kind of give you a general scope, depending on what your speed is, like if you're rowing a 6-minute something 2K, then you can add 5 seconds to your 2K split. If you're rowing an 8-minute 2K, then you probably need to add about 8 or 9 seconds to your 2K split. So that gives you a general sense of, how that split should work. The next piece of advice I've got for you is, number one, as you learn to pace this, you're going to get a little bit more comfortable with going to your target pace earlier in the piece than trying to build into it as you go. Like typically, if you're learning how to row a 5K, it's a good strategy to take it kind of easy over this first half of the piece and then build into it as you kind of learn, where that intensity is for you, right? But overriding all of this or the foundation of all of this is my next tip, which is you really need to race it, right? You need to think about, how do I race this piece? This is not a steady state piece. This is a test piece. And so, getting to the point where you're comfortable really going for it, over 20 minutes is a mindset thing. As we tell all the youth athletes that I row, one of my big pieces of advice is, let's race this. Let's treat this as a race piece rather than a steady state. So that's my number 2 piece of advice for approaching a 5K. So the next thing is like, okay, now let's say, for example, we're at the start line here. Your first 20 strokes of that piece, once you've decided what your target split is going to be, they can be hard strokes. You can row hard for 10 to 15 strokes. But the key here is that once you get to the end of that first 20 strokes that you settle into your pace. All right. And so, for example, if your 5K pace is 208, for example, then looking at this after that first 10 or 15 strokes, you want to settle into a split that's something like a 210 or 209, like +1 or +2 of your intended target pace for that whole piece. And the things to look out for here when you hit that settle here is definitely make sure that you have good length, right? Come out for length. Make sure that you're hitting a good rhythm, right? So being in rhythm is important. And just making sure that you're getting into a nice efficient stroke. Make sure there's plenty of length and acceleration, and just get comfortable. But the key here is to get to that target pace and settle in and start to get your body moving towards that anaerobic threshold point, right? So getting yourself into rhythm here, and essentially rowing that first half of the piece a split or two slower than your target split, so that you're not building up too much lactic acid in the first half of that piece, so that you start paying for it over the second half of that piece. And really, you're racing it, but you're being smart about that first half of the piece, not overdoing it, and just making sure you're sitting up, you're accelerating that stroke all the way through, and you've got that length and acceleration and rhythm really in hand, and relaxing between the strokes, so that you've got a good base of rhythm to build off in that first half of that piece. So that's my advice. Hard 15 strokes, settle, be good about settling to that target split +1, +2, and just have the confidence in your own ability to row that piece as it progresses and the meters tick by. All right, and so the next part of this is, assuming that we've rowed, a good, steady, long, in rhythm, in control, first 2,500, then the tiredness is in, right? You're really into it at this point. You're starting to get tired. You're halfway, and so what happens here is the mind game that occurs in the middle of this piece, right? And what happens is, and this is the mistake that people make, is they start to worry about if you're at the 2,000 meter point, or you're at the 2,500 meter point, then you start to mentally project. So let's say we're here, halfway through the piece, and then mentally we start to project and think about, well, what am I going to feel like when I'm here? What am I going to feel like when I'm here? I wonder what I'm going to feel like at the end of the piece. So what happens is, even though you're not there, you start to mentally project out to those points, and that's a trap, right? That's the trap we want to avoid. The reality of this is, once you're into this phase of the piece, you're going to start to feel it. But the reality of it is that during that piece, yes, it starts to get a little bit worse, but it doesn't get much worse all the way through to the end, right? So the number one do not is, don't project, right? We're not wanting to project down the course, right? I think what you've got to do is stay current with your strokes, count 5-stroke pieces, count 10-stroke pieces. But that's the psychological trick to rowing a good 5K, is to not worry about, that what am I going to be like 500 meters from now? What am I going to be like for 1,000 meters from now? It doesn't actually get much worse. And stay present, right? Stay with that stroke that you're on. And if you can do that and you've rode that first half in a way that's smart and you've done your training, then you're just going to take the second half of this piece 500 meters at a time, right? Or one stroke at a time, and trust in your ability to survive the piece in terms of doing the piece well and working well. So that's the one thing I would say is don't project and stay confident in your own ability. Again, keep your strokes long, right? So again, we're still focusing on keeping that length over the second half of the piece, making sure that you're accelerating all the way through, and keeping that pace and staying current with where you are and not worrying about what's going to happen 100 strokes from now. Like, trust in your own ability to do that. So that's my number one psychological tip for handling a 5K row. And so, as a result, if we're rowing this second half of the piece, once we hit that 2,500, we want to make sure that we're hitting our target split for the next 1,250, right? For sure, or certainly through to the end of the piece, right? So that we're doing that. So, in terms of like what that's going to be like, typically what's going to happen is your rate is going to come up a little bit, right? You're gonna start to get tired, and one way to keep that split is to bring the rate up a little bit. And I would recommend that your rate for this in general could be around about the 26 strokes per minute to 28 strokes per minute. So that's the rate zone you're in. I think some people can do this at 30, 32 strokes per minute. Some people prefer to do this at 24 strokes a minute. That is a general rule, but that is just a good target. Your 28 strokes per minute is your good 5K type rate, right? So when you're thinking about that, that's kind of what we want to be hitting. And so as a result, we start to think a little bit about pushes through this, like 10-stroke pushes as you progress through this piece. So let's talk a little bit about kind of what a push should look like and what it shouldn't be, ideally. So if I put this graph on here like this, and we say that, on this axis is your pace, and this line here represents your target place for the whole piece. You're going to, as I've prescribed here, is you're going to start off fast in your target place, and then you're going to kind of sit under that target pace, and then as you come to the halfway point, so let's say this is the halfway point and this is 5,000 meters, you're going to want to hit that target pace. And what I would say that the pushes are supposed to be is what's going to happen is as you're going along, you're going to see your pace kind of trickle off a little bit, right? So the power tens should be just popping you back up to that rhythm, and possibly a little bit faster for a little bit. But the goal of those is, as the rhythm gets stale, you're just kind of popping yourself back into that target split, right? What we don't want the pushes to be are like if we come off the target split and then we do this sort of power 10 that's really way faster than our target split, and then ultimately we just build up physiology that's not going to help us, and then we crash out of that, right? I mean, I think the point of this is to sort of flatline that pace as close to that line as possible. So when you're pushing, choose when you want to do your pushes, like get a sense of when's my rhythm becoming stale. Let's pop it back up into that race pace, a little bit quicker on the front end. And I think there's an argument for doing a send 10, right? Sending the piece rather than doing a legs 10, for example. If you think about sending, we want that wheel to be as fast as possible at the end of the stroke. So certainly you want to be hard on that catch. I'm not saying soft catch, but if you focus on sending that wheel at the end of the stroke as fast as possible, you're going to do a good push. So that would be my advice, is really think about the process of creating speed as ensuring that that wheel is traveling as fast as possible at the end of the stroke, and you're going to have to surge and accelerate all the way through the stroke with a hard catch. That is a better strategy in force application to really maximize your speed on that 5K. So for the last part of this video, like when, we're into that last kind of 1,000 meters of a piece, we're really in it now. We've been smart about not projecting. We're feeling like tired, but how do we finish that piece off? Again, I would say, concentrate on the power, right? Feeding the power in. Again, I've said it a number of times, staying, watching that length, staying long on that, in that last 750. And really, on this graphic, I've got, the last 750 where we quicken up our pace. But reality is, it might just be if you've really, sort of hit your target split all the way through, it might just be enough to hold on to that. And as you get tired in that piece, the key is to maintain control and relaxation, right? Sometimes when we get tired, we start to lose that technique. And really the best rowers and the best crews, are physiologically very, very similar. But the difference maker is how well do they hold that technical model together? How well do they stay long? How well do they stay cool-headed when the pressure's on in that last quarter? I want you to think about that. So be thinking of yourself, like the analogy I give to some of my athletes is, if you look at a swan that's swimming across the surface of a pond, it looks very graceful, but beneath the water, which you can't see, are the legs going really, really fast to propel the swan along. So graceful like a swan, but keep that, how hard you're working, a little bit hide that, right? You're working hard. Make sure that you're controlling everything. Think 98% power, 2%, just keeping things together in your technical model well, and you're going to end up rowing, a good last 1,000 meters, a strong 1,000 meters, and so forth. So I think that's enough for me. I've kind of covered quite a few different things in this video. We've talked about a few things. We've talked about pacing. How do we pace at particular points? We've talked about, how do we row it? We row it long. How do we row it? We race it. And you build confidence as you go. That first one is always going to be like, what's this going to feel like? But after that, you gain that confidence in terms of, I know now better what my target split is going to be. We've talked a little bit about not projecting and staying psychologically cool and in the moment, rather than worrying about, am I going to make it through to the end of the piece? Yes, you will. Especially if you don't obsess about whether or not you're going to make it. Trust that training and so forth. We've talked about pushes. We've talked about force application, like sending the wheel away, I think is more effective than trying to do a legs 20 and so forth. And then just finishing that piece up and feeling good about that piece. So I hope this is helpful. I've appreciated the chance to kind of talk to you about some thoughts about a 5K row here. Got any comments? Let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you. If I can help in any way, support you in a training capacity, you can reach out to me on my website, coachbergenroth.com, for a free consult. I've helped hundreds of athletes improve their 5K row. And 5K is actually for me more fun than a 2K. I've always enjoyed a longer distance. So for those of you out there who are looking to improve your PB for this 5K, I hope it's helpful, and I've appreciated the chance. And thank you for tuning into the channel, and I'll keep churning out more good content to help you go faster. All right, take care. And if you haven't liked the video, like the video. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. Share my content. That would mean the world to me. And we'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.